Hey everybody, this is Talkative Carl back again for another movie spoiler review. And today we'll be talking about the Dark Knight Part 2 of the Nolan trilogy. And boy, how do this movie holds up. I watched this I don't know how many times. It, I think I watched the first two more times than I did the third. The third is fine, but it's just like, I don't know. I think Bane probably elevates that movie just to make it as good as it is. But Heath Ledger just makes this movie work so well, and it's just that oh man, God, God, is everything about this movie is just is everything. But of course, this is kind of like well, I want to say it's not too far off as this movie starts off. It's not too far off from the events of the last film. Probably maybe like you know, probably like 3 to 6 months after the events of Batman Begins, because he's still wearing the Batman Begins costume, and which I like the fact that they even addressed uh, this in the film, where it's like I need to upgrade my armor because it's too stiff and it's kind of like bulky, and it's not going to do the job like as it did before. And it's like usually in previous Batman films, it's like he gets one costume in one film, and then he already has like a better one in another film, and it is never seen as to why. Like he just upgrades it, or he just changes it. He just does it, or it just happens. And this one is just like I want to be able to be faster. As this, it's little touches like that. It's awesome. But as it begins, you get to see a bank robbing scene, and it's like you right at the beginning, you see because like as this movie was announced, I was in college at the time. I think my first year in college at the time when they were announcing this movie, and people was so poo-pooing the idea of Heath Ledger playing the Joker, because all the promotion for this movie was fantastic. I think this and Deadpool, and I think the Benedict Cumberbatch's Grinch movie were three movies that I can think of off the top of my head right now that did marketing for their films so well, and it was just genius of marketing, as probably better than I've seen in marketing for films, and I've seen in a long time. Is those three that kind of stand out for me. Uh, I thought about doing Gotham Knight, but I figured I just stick with the three Nolan trilogies. Eventually, I'll probably do Gotham Knight animated film somewhere down the line, because there's a lot of Batman animated films I want to do, but I want to make sure I just stick to Spider-Man for the most part. But I had just a need to do Nolan as well, so I figured I'd knock it out at the same time because it's relatively short. But I want to make sure I get all the Spider-Man stuff before the third movie comes in December. But yeah, you see right out of the gate, because like I said, like people was poo-pooing the idea of Heath Ledger playing as Joker, because you know how people are when like somebody's being announced to be cast as a particular superhero or villain character, and we don't know how they are until we see it. So a lot of people are tend to be judgy. Even back then, people were so judgy on the idea. I mean, I'm gonna say like I was in that camp too. I'm not gonna lie to you, because for the longest time, Jack Nicholson was everybody's Joker, or at least for the live action one. Animated is obviously Mark Hamill. It still is Mark Hamill. Never gonna be beaten. But I mean, Troy Baker is like at least the second best animated Joker that we got. But uh, live action for the longest time has always been Jack Nicholson for a lot of people, and this Heath Ledger was I won't say he's an unknown actor, but he's just that he's an unknown factor into like people didn't know how he's gonna portray the Joker uh, until we saw it on screen. No holds barred. This definitely was a different Joker, but I think took what Nicholson did and elevated to like the modern standards. Because keep in mind, because this Joker was like pretty much like if Jack Nicholson's Joker was more of like a gangster, of like traditional like mobster gangster type of Joker, while this Joker, Heath Ledger, was the anarchist terrorist version of Joker. That was just, and I love the fact that like, uh, this particular Joker is just because that's why I was hesitant. Well, I acknowledge that the Joker movie is a very solid movie, but I still reserve the fact that I just don't like the idea of giving the Joker an origin story. Even though we kind of know that, he fell in the vat of acid and became the Joker. And that just kind of inadvertently part of his origin story. But it's just that, that's just one of a few origin stories, to the Joker. So it's like he's one of the few characters that we are glad that we don't have like a concrete origin story for, because in this film it's played so well the fact that he gives, before he kills somebody, he tells them like, you want to know how they got these scars, and he tells a different story to different people, because the Joker I read a lot of like psychology books, and watched a lot of documentaries on the subject of the Joker. The fact that he's classified, I didn't know it's like a legit term in real life, because there's no real life Joker, thank God. But for the best of a lot of psychologists' abilities to ascertain of what kind of sanity or insanity they're dealing with when it comes to a Joker character, they deemed it as close as they can possibly could as like a form of super sanity. Whereas that in a way is probably even more scary than the thought of just him being just an insane person, is that he is so insane that he's actually sane. The fact that he's so sane that he just sees the world, in a particular way that, is beyond, what we see it on a normal scape. He's like seeing it beyond the physical, and the fact that the way he sees things is just so warped. Like like he's saying, like all the order that we live in, it is a bad joke, and like the actual order is chaos. Chaos is the most sane thing in his worldview, and it's just like it's just an awesome take on it. It's just like, that's what I'm saying. It's like it's a form of a kind of super sanity. I mean, that's the closest the way they can diagnose it. Real life psychologists, to my knowledge, it's the closest how they can diagnose a character like that. But thank God we don't have a character like that in real life to like gauge, because Joker in real life is completely like you in constant peril kind of situation, because he just like, he's in this movie, he's like a force of nature that he's like, we don't know where he's coming from. He's kind of like something that's called from the ether to balance, like I mentioned in the previous Batman Begins review that's on the channel that I did last week. If the mobsters and all the crime that just befuddled Gotham kind of birthed Batman as the contrast, to them, in order to because all what they did is kind of like they kind of birthed their own demise in a way. And in a way, Batman kind of birthed not only a Joker, but characters like these kind of like because I mentioned, in Batman Begins, it's like Batman Year One, and Dark Knight is pretty much Long Halloween, and it's like in Long Halloween, it is a Elseworld story in a way, but also kind of like pseudo continuity where it's like, you get like all these crazy, outlandish new form of criminals. Because the way of the mobster is died out. It's old crime, and in order to like modernize crime, they gotta match the dichotomy of Batman, and you get like Scarecrow, Mad Hatter, Catwoman, Joker, Mr. Freeze, Riddler, Two-Face, and Penguin. You get characters like that in order to be able to balance out what Batman created in a way, in an unwillingly created, because it's like, it's a thing about like escalation throughout this film. It's like, as Alfred put it later in the film, it's like, you started this, you hammered them, you pushed them to the point of desperation, and in that desperation, they went to a man they didn't fully understand, and it's like they, in a way, caused their own demise even further to the point of non-existence, to the point where it's like now you got this new class of criminal, and they're here to stay. It's evolution in a way, make way to the new form of a system that replaces the old ways. Anyway, Cillian Murphy coming back a little bit as Scarecrow. He's always a treasure to see. He's a great Scarecrow. I love Cillian Murphy. Every time he's on screen as a Scarecrow, I loved him in Batman Begins. That's pretty much why him and Liam Neeson is probably the reason I go back to Batman Begins so much, because I think the villains in the Nolan trilogy is the reason that we probably go back to more so than actual Christian Bale Batman, even though he was a great Batman. But Bane and his, we make fun of it. It's a great choice to have Bane talk like this. I was raised in the darkness. You really adopted the darkness. I was born in it. And it's like, we make fun of that, but it was like a great choice. And it's like the Harley Quinn show really made that character just like more lovable. And like, even though he's like the most ruthless, merciless kind of killing machine, that voice, it's like, he's supposed to kind of like a luchador, from South American type of voice realistically. But every now and again, it's fun to hear the, goofy Bane voice. And it's like, it works either way. But I think if you put it to a vote, I think a lot of people would prefer the Dark Knight trilogy Bane voice over the luchador South American version. But then, of course, you got like Liam Neeson, Ra's al Ghul, great character. Liam Neeson is great in pretty much everything he's in. Cillian Murphy as Scarecrow. Heath Ledger, Joker, R.I.P. Heath Ledger. I mean, I forgot the actress's name, but like the girl who played Talia al Ghul, she was fine, but it's not like she's kind of like slightly overshadowed by Bane because of the performance from I forgot the actor's name, but the guy who played Bane in the Nolan trilogy, like, I think she got like kind of outshined by him, because I don't think that many people like went back to Dark Knight Rises for her. Anytime they probably go back to that, it's mostly because of Bane. But anyway, like, Batman's working with Gordon just to weed out the last bit of remnants of the mob now, to clean up the streets permanently. But then they got this Joker character who they think is like a know-nothing they can just handle later, because the primary concern right now is just getting rid of the last bit of the mob. But then you get this awesome opening scene. There's like a lot of great scenes in this, but a lot of people talk about how they love the very first opening scene at the bank robbery. I personally, it's okay, but my personal favorite scene is like a good opening is like when like the mobs, all together in that one basement room, and talking about like with Lao, where uh Lao slash Sang Sung, talking about like hiding their money and him running off to Hong Kong, so there's no extradition, so that way they can try to better hide the money from Dent and avoid getting prosecuted and what have you by Dent, the new district attorney, who Batman don't really trust all that much because he's a new X factor that he doesn't understand himself, and also kind of sticks in his craw that he doesn't want to show it, but it's kind of obvious that he's like a little bothered the fact that his love interest or person he's always been interested in is with a new guy. But you see like them like going over the the plans, and all you hear is like ha 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 ha, and I thought my jokes were bad. And it's like just that entire scene is just like, oh my god, I rewatched it just for that scene if I have to, but it's just like that whole entire like conversation. And there's certain movies that had just great scenes with just people talking, and you got like the number one is like the first Jurassic Park movie, when like after they see all the dinosaurs for the first time and they sitting at the lunch table, and Ian Malcolm and Dr. Grant, and they're all just having a conversation with Dr. Hammond. That's a great scene with just them talking, and you just want to be in that moment just to give your 2 cents and just have a discussion. This is another one where it has like a great talking moment where it's just like you got Gamble played by Michael J. White. He's like, give me one reason why I have my man here won't give me one reason why I don't have my man pull your head off. How about a magic trick? I'm gonna make this pencil disappear. Ta-da! Now it's gone. And by the way, this suit is not cheap. Y'all know you bought it. And like, it took me a while before I eventually caught the joke, where it's like he been stealing for the mob, and like they talking about how he wear this cheap purple suit, and he's like, he's kind of offhanded comments like the suit wasn't cheap. You all know you technically bought it. I used your money, so technically you bought it. So it took me a while before I got the joke. But I was just in awe with the entire scene, so that kind of went over my head for a while. And then it's like another, just the way the entire scene just carries on. Let's wind the clock back a year. These cops and lawyers wouldn't dare cross any of you. I mean, what happened? Did your balls fall off? I say, a guy like me, freak. A guy like me. And there's moments when Gamble's sitting there like just trying to antagonize this man, and it's like you can tell that like there's certain shots of like a perfect like shots. If you look at like Heath Ledger's face as a Joker, and it's like he takes one look at him. It's like he gives like you like 3 chances. Like, you got 3 strikes, dude. And it's like, that was strike number 2. The first strike for number 1 is try to get your man to come at me. Strike number 2 is you call me a freak. And then strike 3, and like of course, and eventually a scene where he kills Gamble, is when he's like and then he's when that outburst is like, enough from the clown. And then like putting out a hit on him. But it's like, but it's like the scene was that whole entire scene. It's just so like it just sets you up like this is like not only a different Joker, but probably like an even better Joker than Jack Nicholson, dare I say. And it's like, I love Jack Nicholson Joker. Obviously he's like a pretty high standard for a lot of people, especially because I love Tim Burton, and a lot of Burton movies I love very much. And the Jack Nicholson's Joker is like very revered for me. But like Heath Ledger elevates that character exceptionally well, and his take on the Joker is phenomenal. But it's just like that scene is awesome. But then of course you get to know Harvey Dent, played by Aaron Eckhart, who for the longest time, people was like so worried about like how he's gonna portray Two-Face after the whole event with Batman Forever with Tommy Lee Jones, who, despite giving Jim Carrey shit about like his, as he put it, like can't sanction your buffoonery, and then you just after you said that to this man who is a legitimized actor in his own right, and you try to match his energy instead of just doing your own thing. And it's like it's wild to me, like how the hypocrisy of that. And so to be honest, I think people like favor Batman Forever most because Jim Carrey's Riddler and less so of Tommy Lee Jones Two-Face, because that entire thing was was like definitely a poor choice. But eventually I will do Batman Forever as a review. But then you got him setting the stage for how we're gonna view Harvey Dent, because Nolan and Aaron Eckhart set this character up pitch perfectly as like a Two-Face. And currently right now, they in the comics they're like doing like the Batman 89 universe in a comic book format, and I kind of want them to do something similar for like Christopher Nolan's Batman universe, and like kind of like we work it to bring Bruce back into the role of Batman, and have Joseph Gordon-Levitt as the Robin instead of Batman, and like do a continuation of that franchise through comic book format. I want to do that. I really wish they do that, because Aaron Eckhart's Two-Face is like probably the best Two-Face I've seen beyond the animated series version. It's just those two as far as like really good. And like as he's like questioning one of the criminals on the stand, he pulls out a gun on Dent, and Dent just like does this cool little move to disarm him, like completely unafraid, taking on any mobsters, despite having a gun pull on him or anything like that. Just shows like his just shows his gumption. And so far as like this is like a true man, like a true good individual. And the fact that his down I mentioned in my Spider-Man 2 review about like characters like Dr. Octopus, who had like a great intentions, like a real true blue individual, and like they fall from grace and they fall hard, and it's just it kind of like breaks your heart to see that happen to like a legitimately good person. And I'm just wondering, like, okay, how, like, you got metal detectors, right? And you're dealing with people who are like known criminals first and foremost, but you always pat people down. When somebody's coming to court, you pat people down before like they enter like a facility like that. So like they should have known, like somehow somebody should have found out that he had a gun on. But of course they also kind of like try to like do a fake out in a way, because we all know like traditionally in the comics, Harvey get his face burnt, half his face burnt off, because a criminal on the stand tucked away a vial of acid and flung it in his face. And it kind of like they trying to do a fake out of that, but instead it was a gun and he disarmed them. So, you expect one thing, they kind of undercut it, and I love that. I really love that. That was a smart play by Nolan. So he's like, we set the stage for Harvey Dent. He's taking on the mobsters. He's working with Gordon. Now, of course, he kind of gives Gordon kind of crap, because Gordon is, working with, he's dealing from the events of the first film. Gotham was so corrupt, and like he only had like a few allies outside of Batman to work with. Now, the closest, the the two closest ones that he have working with, two or three he have closest working with, which is weird that none of them was Harvey Bullock. That could have like included Harvey Bullock among the group of people that Dent didn't like, because he's because Harvey Bullock in the animated series seems like a kind of guy that looks like he's going to take, but he's actually the most stand-up individual in the ranks of GCPD. But there's two people that Dent investigated before, and he doesn't trust them working with Gordon, because he feels like they can easily just as be as just still be corrupt themselves and undercut or undermine every investigation that come across them, especially dealing with the last remnants of the mob, because they're definitely trying to fight back to retain whatever level of power they still have left, because of the Batman's constant interference and the GCPD that they don't have underneath their heel coming down on them is causing issues. And it's like a lot of pushback that they're dealing with. And so Bruce meeting Harvey Dent is another great scene, another good talking scene, because there's a lot of theories and discussions happening in this movie, and it's not boring either. It's not like Star Wars prequels with all this little political talk, and it's so boring to hell. This was actually intriguing. It doesn't drag on longer than it needs to be, but it gives you enough where you just you ponder yourself and gets you to thinking. And it's like the scene when it's like in the dinner, and it's like, I want to pull off that kind of sweet, kind of like boss move like that. One day it was like, he got this like ballerina on his arm, and he's coming to this restaurant where he obviously probably knew Rachel would be at with Harvey, and he's like, Rachel, fancy that. Yeah, Bruce, fancy that. I was like, so you're the famous Bruce Wayne. Rachel told me so much about you. Well, so we hope not. And it's like, God, I love that. And it's like, why don't we sit together? I don't think they will let us. Well, they should. I own the place. And it's like, I just want to pull that kind of boss moves. Like, well, they should. And like, just seeing like a group of people that I know, and it's like, I don't think they'll let us sit. It's like, well, they should. I own the place. And it's like, just call like a table, like a couple of chairs over. And it's just, I just want to pull like a boss move like that. It's like, well, they should. I own the place. And just be like just like an overall baller like that. But then you see like this like cool like discussion where like Harvey is like, when like the ballerina chick mentions like, how can you live in like a city where you idolize like a mask vigilante, and like Harvey's like, well, Gotham Citizens is like proud of like an individual like Batman, because he's standing up to because like who's standing up for what's right, because like a lot of Gotham citizens let scum like Falcone and like Maroni and all these other mobsters run rampant as for such a long time. And he compared Batman to like Caesar, where it's like, when the enemies were at the gates, the Romans appointed one man, Caesar, to be their leader, and it wasn't considered right. It wasn't considered honor. It was considered a privilege. It's kind of like harkens with like Spider-Man 2 is like genius is not like a right, is a privilege, and use it for the betterment of mankind kind of situation. And Rachel tells him like, the last person they appointed their leader was Caesar, and he never gave up his power. And like, it's a nice line that a lot of people still echo to this day. It's like, you either die a hero or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain. And it's like that little callback, as you know what happens with Harvey being Two-Face at the end of the film, that kind of like circles back and it's the movie ends. The way the movie ends is like it's almost like it's no winners in this. It's the Gotham kind of wins in this, where they got finally like the scums off the street and like Joker is locked up, but it's kind of bittersweet. Where it's like we all know, spoiler alert by the way, we all know, Harvey becomes Two-Face, he dies, so they kind of like, Gordon kind of like put up this lie where it was like, set up like the Dent Act, where it's like keep like his last, in his last moments, he, worked hard to put away a lot of these bad guys, and it's like we, set up this law to make sure, these kind of criminals will stay locked up and won't be running rampant in the streets again, poisoning Gotham any further. But it's just like all their hope is built on a lie in a way, and Batman's eventually had to gone into exile. It's just like and I mean, even though they got all those criminals off the street, the Joker kind of crippled slightly crippled Gotham in a way. The fact that all the devastation this one man caused for days, and it's like he single-handedly nearly brought Gotham to his knees with a few gallons of explosives and a couple of bullets, as he put it. After talking with Dent, he's like Bruce kind of realized, because he hopes to like just be done being Batman and be with Rachel, because she doesn't want to be with a guy who lives two lives and like kind of situation. But as he mentioned in like the end of the last film, she hoped to be with him when like where like when like the time comes when Gotham doesn't need Batman anymore. And he's trying to like he's so focused, because that's why he's like kind of at the beginning in his kind of, I won't say hubris, but like his goal is his overall, he figures like his reward for his hard work is to be with Rachel and put up the bat suit for good. But he wants to make sure Gotham is safe, for the citizens, and by putting these mobsters away. And like it's like, and of course, Batman in the comics and in movie franchises, he wants to be rid of crime, which is like a foolhardy. I mean, even he knows it's like kind of like a foolhardy kind of dream or goal, because you can never get rid of crime. It's always going to be crime in some form or fashion. But in this particular trilogy, it seems more achievable, because like he's figured like only thing he has to deal with these monsters, and once they're gone, it's like I can pretty much be done with this. That's overall my goal, so I can just put this behind me, because that's why I trained, and that's why I got together his bat suits and all these gadgets. That way I can just hang it up and focus on my life. But he didn't account for someone like Joker to come popping up out of the ether, because he's, like I said, he's like a force of nature. Just came out of nowhere. There's no, as Gordon put it later in the film, it's like, the suit is custom made, the fingerprints are burned off. There's no DNA they can pull where they can like, they can pinpoint who this guy is, which is weird, because you can still get saliva and bits of his hair, and maybe not his hair because it's dyed green, but you can get DNA samples and pinpoint who this guy is, blood samples or something. You can figure out who this guy is. But for the sake of argument, in this particular film, he is like just like an unknown person, this John Doe kind of person. He just came out of nowhere, almost like the just like a I don't know what the proper word is, but just came out of like the like chaos incarnate. Like chaos somehow, is like an answer to all this order that's kind of like unbalancing the scales a bit. Just like, unruly mobsters kind of like unbalance the scales in one direction. And so Batman came out of the ether in a way, to their point of view, to balance or even the scales a bit. But then Batman kind of raised his side too far as he's getting rid of all this crime. So now to balance the scales again, something has to answer to the form of Batman in contrast. So you get chaos incarnate in the form of the Joker. And so now you got like so now it's kind of like leveled out at this point, because neither one Joker won't kill Batman because he's too much fun, and Batman won't kill him because he doesn't kill, and he's like incorruptible. But of course, like, where I leave off, yeah. So he also eventually get rid of, like, the criminal element, which is the mobster in his eyes. But then he has to, in order to do that, he has to eventually go to Hong Kong, which he figured out a way to, like, put up this facade where he's taking, like, the ballet dancers from this play or whatever to out on this boating trip, and advertise it. So he's like, trying to make sure, like, he has a good cover. So he's like, by private plane, he goes to Hong Kong, with a brand new bat suit designed by Lucius Fox, aka Morgan Freeman, and he gets Lau, brings him back to the United States. So because, like, there was a little rooftop scene, it's kind of like a callback to the Long Halloween, where it's like they're planning their takedown of the mob. Officially, you got like Gordon Dent and Harvey, Gordon Dent and Batman, discussing that plan. So it's like, he's finally meeting Batman, like, on a rooftop, because he knows, like, this is light that's on top of the roof of GCPD, and it's like, it's clearly you're calling Batman, you're working with him, you're trying to act like you're not, but Dent's not stupid, so he calling Batman himself, and so it's like, Batman's like, if I bring him to you, will you get him to talk? And, like, I'll get him to sing. And so he gets, Lau back, because they can't do it the legal way, because Hong Kong doesn't. I'm not sure if Hong Kong even changed that policy, because maybe there was like a thing back then, but I'm not sure if they even changed that policy about extradition, because there's still countries that don't extradite one of their own to any other country. But Lau's brought back. He's interrogated. And so now, as Joker said earlier in the film, I recognize the squealers, and he's definitely a squealer. So, like, because that's like Joker's philosophy. When the chips are down, people will show who they truly are. And it's like he manipulates a lot, which is like one of the things that people point out. And after rewatching this so many times, I can see their point. Even though this movie feel like it's damn near perfect, the one thing that a lot of people want to count against it is just like certain things that work out well for Joker. Like a scene where Harvey's in the hospital, and, like, Joker is pushing him, like, to accept chaos in a way, accept his worldview, bringing him down to our level essentially. And he, holding him at gunpoint, and Harvey's like using his trick coin as guard on one side, and it's like, heads you live, tails you die. And of course, the Joker throughout his films, like, he doesn't care if he dies. He's just like, he completely resigned himself. Was like, I just wanted to bring people to their lowest point, even if it's a detriment to my life. I don't care, especially if he's get people to abandon their rules or their values or morality, because when they're pushed to a point, because, like, who knows what anybody will be capable of doing if they're pushed to a certain point. like if somebody's significant other's in danger, or they're like for self-preservation, what would you compromise uh to either save yourself or save somebody who you care about? And it's like, hope nobody ever have to be put in a position like that. But it's the because like the whole two boat scene, that's another thing. It's like it's similar to like the first Spider-Man movie where like Green Goblin had like these, like a trolley full of kids and MJ on one other side, and it's like forces Spider-Man to pick and choose who to save. And it's like, kind of like the hero's kind of dilemma decision, uh uh like as Green Goblin would put it, we are who we choose to be. And like, and like of course in that boat scene, like the people, one full of criminals and one full of citizens, neither one chose not to blow the other up, and it was like a tense scene. And like it still remains one of the tensest scene in film in cinema. The fact that like they're people are like sweating, and because like you can feel like the tension on each boat when it's like, I know I'm jumping around, but it's just like so much to talk about, and this film's so good. It's like the scene is so tense, and like no matter how many times you see it, you can just feel that the tension is palpable on both scenes. Like even like the like of course it was starting off as pretty much unruly when they was hearing the Joker over the intercom talking like, if you got until midnight to decide, I left a trigger for each other's bombs. So, you got to decide, like, Gotham citizens, will you blow up the boat full of criminals, or the criminals, will you blow up the boat full of innocent civilians? It's like, you choose. And like, just like a lot of like preachers and, ministers like to, bring up the fact that, despite what you might see on like the news or wherever like that, by and large, people, because like the universal law is like good will always triumph in the end. And like for the most part, like people are good. And I truly do believe that, honestly. It's like there are like a few exceptions like in the world. There's like got like very like heinous individuals. But it's so minute if you look at the grand scheme of things. There's so very few Hitlers out in the world. There's so very few Stalins out in the world. And there's people like even lesser degree, like, there's so few Ted Bundys out in the world. There's so few, even less than that. Well, I don't want to say how few, but I don't know the complete ratio is, honestly. But it's like, throughout the masses of people out in the whole entire globe, by and large, there are decent individuals in the world that won't resort to like just killing each other. Like there's like somebody brought up to like a lawyer, I think it was Legal Eagle, was like, if the purge situation, that would it really exist in the real world? Would that even fly? No, because no one would be like down with that. No one will just, if like, first of all, it wouldn't pass a law like that ever, to allow people to just go rampant for one day out of the year. But fun fact, there's like a on a side note, it is like almost like some village or anything like that, but it's like an area, don't know, it's like South America or like one like a village or something like that in the world. It's like it looks like some part of the world where like on Christmas Day they kind of have like a purge like scenario, but it's not killing each other. They just kind of like choose that one day, which is weird, Christmas Day out of the year, to just solve their grievances by just fighting whoever they feel like fighting. And they sell things with a fist fight with a person they just want to just do it with, and it's perfectly allowed to just be, just like no killing. Obviously, they still wouldn't like, kill each other, but it's allowed to just, just even if it's like a relative or a coworker or whoever you choose to, and just walk up to them and just started like just fighting each other on Christmas Day. They just picked Christmas Day out of any other day, just the one day out of the year to air their grievances and to sell this thing. They open presents, I'm pretty sure, on Christmas morning, and by the rest of the day, they find the person they feel like they got grievous with, and they just beat them up or fight with them in general, for that day, and then just like, and that's that, and it's kind of like lay out their aggressor, and they chose Christmas Day. That's random, but it's a fun fact. It's technically a scenario like that, but nobody applies that for the rest of the world, thank God. But it's kind of like deep down, by and large, humanity, wouldn't go that far. There's only a very minute group of people that's actually that horrific. But this movie kind of shows you, like, like the morality of people in a way. It's like, how far people will go, and like, or humanity just hopeless, animals that will, kill each other and eat each other when things, get hard, or will they rise above it? Like the people on the, boats, like R.I.P. Debo. He's like one of the criminals on this boat. Took the detonator, tossed it out the window, and it's like, and they just like, because even the criminals there, even though they in for various reasons, they want to blow up a boat full of people, they probably just don't have any kind of ire with. And it's like, why would it, like, they wouldn't do that, and they probably didn't even say this game, even though there's probably a few people that's kind of like, kind of bugging, but there's still guards there, and it's like, even they have some reservations, about like, make sure they go home all right. But then you got like, the citizens is like just freaking up. One lady's like, they had their chance, like kind of thing, and one bald dude's trying to feel like he could step up and like make that tough call, but even he like, I can't. Like, there's still people at the end of the day. There's still people at the end of the day, and you just like would not, harm an individual like that, especially for no good reason, and especially not at the beck and call for a madman. So like that scene was very powerful too. But yeah, man, just everything about this movie is just phenomenal. It's like I can pick out like every little scene, and I don't have that kind of time, but it's just like, oh my God, this movie is just phenomenal. It was just like, of course, you got a scene where like, in the sonar equipment that Lucius picked. It's just like a little small thing on like a phone size thing that Batman uses to like survey the building that Lau is like walled himself off in Hong Kong, and he later comes back where he kind of blows it up tenfold, where he utilizes that technology to spy on everybody in Gotham just to find Joker, because they're having a hard time trying to find the Joker. And of course, like Lucius thinking like Batman's pretty much compromising himself, like turning his own technology to spy on. And it's like it's just around the time when it's like the whole, we're still dealing with the events of, it's only like this movie came out in like 2008, so it's like 7 years past the events of 9/11. So it's like we're still reeling for terrorist kind of situations. And I know, like, I think as of right now, today is officially 9/11. So anybody who lost individuals during that time, my heart goes out to you. And like it's definitely a day of remembrance, because like it's almost one of the most tragic things that happened on American soil ever. And all the people who lost their lives in that thing, anybody who's lost individuals there who gave their lives to help others in that tragedy, my heart goes out to you, and I hope you are doing well. This movie is kind of like just kind of harkens to that, or at least like have like little subtle references to that whole situation, whereas like you don't want like a complete madman in the form of the Joker, who's like just like an anarchist and a terrorist in a way, just because he does terrorist acts. By and large, his crime is terrorist acts and anarchy. So if he was ever like brought on trial, that's what he would be tried as a terrorist. And by and large, I think he would be put to the death, get the death penalty. But then again, he's clearly insane, so they wouldn't put him on death. They won't put. I don't think anybody would put an insane person on death row. They put him in like a padded cell, technically for the rest of his life. Yeah. Of course, when Lucius like, oh, like I'll help you this one time, but like as long as this machine's still here, I won't be. Of course, I don't know why Batman just doesn't tell him like when you put your, because he told us like when you finish, put your name in, to cut it off, and it self-destructs when he does that. But it's like you could just told him that like this is only temporary. You can just like it feels like Batman's compromising his principles in this moment where he's just so focused on making sure we catch the Jokers. He's like at this point, he's like he brought down District Attorney Harvey Dent, who and killed Rachel in the process. Because oh my god, it's another scene like I brought about the little interrogation scene in the interrogation cell. But that's a moment where it's like he's talking with Lucius. He's in bat costume. It's like he knows who you are. Why are you still doing the bat voice? It's like you think somebody's like around, you don't know, like might sneak in or something like that. Like, come on now. It's like you don't need to do the voice with people that you. I mean, then again, even in the anime series, when he's around like Alfred, he still does technically the voice, but it's like it's weird. You don't have to do it with people that know who you are. But then like before that, it's like a cool when they caught the Joker. At first, after like Joker is like started assassinating the previous Commissioner Loeb, a judge who locked away a lot of the mobsters, and try to go after Dent because he pretty much like put out like a kind of like a call of like like a warning to like Batman's like if Batman doesn't take off his mask, then and every day he doesn't, someone will die. And like true to form, he's for a couple of days, he's been just murdering people, just like left and right, judges and commissioners and stuff like that. And of course, when they trick Joker into showing himself after Dent trying to come out as like the Batman, even though like at this point when it's like when things are like really getting his hardest for Bruce, it's like he's figuring like I can't endure this. It's like people are dying, and it's like I gotta turn myself in because it's like this is the only way to like put a stop to all this madness. And it's like another great line because like Alfred gets, it's like Michael Caine gets a lot of great lines in this. It's like the story went about like he knew like a man in Burma, and it's like when you tell the story, you feel like you're right there, and which is like the great acting coming from Michael Caine along with the great writing in comparison. It's like I was in Burma, and me and some friends was tasked with catching this bandit who was robbing this caravan of their precious stones, and for like days on end, they haven't met anyone who traded with him, and until like they found like some kids playing with a ruby the size of a tangerine, and they realized the bandit just been throwing them away. And it's like, Bruce like, why steal them? Well, he thought it was good sport because some men are in it for money, and they can be bought, bullied, or negotiated with. Some men just want to watch the world burn. And that entire scene was powerful. I love it. It's like one of my other favorite scenes out of this one. So just that entire sequence of that story is so good. just because you feel like you're right there with him on that expedition trying to find this bandit as he's telling the story. You feel like you can visualize seeing that kid playing with that ruby, and it's like, and then when Bruce eventually asks him, the bandit who was robbing that caravan, how did you stop him? We burned down the forest. And it's like, oh man, that got me. It's like, it's like, of course, Alfred, we know Alfred is being like a former spy, so he has no qualms with killing people, like if he has to. Unlike Batman, who's like averted, is averse to killing anybody. So he had no qualms with burning down the forest just to get this guy. Who knows? He even got him. We like to believe he got him, but he had to do something drastic in order to like make sure we caught him, because he's like eluding them for such a long time through this forest. So as it's like kind of like trying to convince Bruce, like you have to endure. They hate you for it, but that's the point of Batman. He can be the outcast, so he can take the brunt of the hate, but it's necessary. But then you got another great scene when it's like when they eventually caught Joker, and because they found out like Harvey Dent never went home, and you can tell like something was up when like one of Dent's colleagues, Ramirez, get that sudden look when like he's getting in the car driving home, or supposed to be getting home, but he's like kidnapped along with eventually Rachel. But you get this little scene between like Batman and Joker. It's like, you want me? Here I am. I just want to see what you do, and you didn't disappoint. And it's like even then he's still telling a few jokes here and there. It's like as soon as like the light switch on after after Gordon tried to get some answers from him, but he's just still playing around with him. And so he leaves in a room with Batman, and Batman just pushes his head against the thing. Like, never start with a head. The victim gets all fuzzy. It just he's like just toying with the whole idea. He's just like messing around. He just does not care. He's fucking with these people at this point. And he's getting off on it. But a lot of people consider like he's probably gonna easily be like the Joker. A lot of people suspect in this continuity he could be former military, given the fact that he's wearing war paint for his makeup. The way his scars on his sides of his mouth that form a smile can indicate torture in a way, and it's kind of warped his mind. And the way he's saying like never go for the head, the victim gets fuzzy, just means that he has been through interrogation or he's done interrogation like that in his in his prior life, if there is a prior life. But like I said, I'm glad we don't know. I think this is like a great representation of Joker, where he's just an embodiment of chaos that came out of nowhere. But yeah, and that whole entire scene is just great. And he's just telling Batman like, I don't want to kill you. What do I do without you? You complete me. And he's trying to tell like Batman his philosophy is like, when it like they need you now, but when they don't, they'll cast you out like a leper. And it's like, when the chips are down, they'll eat each other. And it's like that's his view, how he views the world. It's like, like way everybody's trying to control everything, or like they trying to make a plan. Like he's telling Harvey, in like in a hospital scene, it's like, like I'm an agent of chaos. I'm like a dog chasing cars. I don't know what I would do if I caught it. I just do things. And it's just like he mentions like, and like, do I look like a man do I look like I have like a man with a plan? It's like, you plan your stuff. You do plan your stuff. It's like, it's chaotic. You still have to plan certain things. You have to plan to make sure that these people, Gordon and I mean not Gordon, Dan and Rachel are kidnapped to be put in these warehouses separately, far apart. Uh, you got to plan out the whole boat situation. To plan out like blowing up a hospital. You have to plan certain things. It's chaotic, and on the outside looking in, it's look chaotic and out of order. But you personally are the only one who knows how this is set up, or at least it's supposed to go. Even if something happens to you, it'll somehow still go off, maybe at some point. But you finally push Batman's buttons when he mentions how, like, he got Rachel too, and like he doesn't care if he's being savagely beaten by Batman at this point. He's asking like, "Where are they?" And it's like, you have nothing to threaten me with. And it's like, with all your strength, it's like, he's even when he's getting beaten by Batman, he's in complete control, and that's just like a cool scene. It's like everything about this is cool scenes, and just like it's so much to get from each scene, and it's like perfect show don't tell, and perfect tell don't show. It's like a perfect balance of the two. The cinematography is phenomenal. The acting is top notch from everybody, even like the supporting characters and minor characters. Nobody's a slouch in this, and it's like it's mind-boggling how like Christopher Nolan can get all this, like a perfect swell of like a stew, and it's like perfectly balanced, and it's like, this entire film is just great. I love The Dark Knight. I watch it every chance I get. It's in like the double digits how many times I've seen this film, and like Batman Begins is like just like a little bit below that. Not by much, but because I like to watch them back to back half the time. Rises a little bit less so than that, but from time to time I do catch up with it mostly because of Bane. But I will revisit it again for next week's review. But that's my review for The Dark Knight. What I know I was jumping around, but I can't rave about this movie enough, man. It's just a perfect stew of a movie, and it's like I gobble up that stew every chance I get, and it's like like I said, like Heath Ledger is probably like the standout for a lot of people. Like I was gonna like beyond Heath Ledger, what other characters did you feel like stood out for you? Like even if it's supporting or major, like beyond Heath Ledger, what other character kind of stood out for you? Who was the weakest? Because I think maybe if I had to choose like a weaker character, I think maybe like, well, I was gonna say Rachel, but it's like I think she had more agency in this than it was in Batman Begins, because she seems like a slightly more to do here, because you get to see her do her thing as assistant DA. But I don't know. I can't figure out anybody who's actually a slouch in this. But yeah, please leave a like, comment, subscribe, share, all that good stuff to Talkative Carl on YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter. Follow me on my Patreon, patreon.com/TalkativeCarl if you want to further support the channel. And I'll see you guys next week for another movie review for Dark Knight Rises and Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 3. And I will wish you all a good night.